Guys, so I just want to go over a few things today. I'm going to go over two executive orders from Trump that was recently implemented back in late March. I'm going to go over some things about Elon Musk's conflict of interest issue. Whole thing about the right to vote situation that's not right. I'm going to go over that in detail. JD Vance basically claiming that people who are on Social Security don't have jobs or they should be working. The whole RFK Jr. situation with Measles, it just keeps getting worse. I'm gonna give more updates to that later in the future too. Bill that was vetoed, I believe, by a governor. I'm gonna go over that as well. And Ireland situation about driving to the US. We'll definitely give them more detail about that. So first I want to go over this March 27, 2025. It's actually order from Donald Trump. There's the White House website, so .gov. It's completely official. It's about restoring truth and sanity to American history. Keep in mind that the whole point of this BS executive order from Trump is that he wants to control the history of US. He wants to make sure that people think that white slave owners were not so bad towards people from Africa and indigenous Americans. They were actually good. They actually gave them opportunities they didn't have in the past. Some BS like that. Why? I have a feeling this is what he wants to do. It's not purely a feeling. It's based on evidence of his racist behaviors over decades. If you go into some rural states and look at the education curriculum, you notice that certain things they teach about slavery is not accurate. And they try to really whitewash slave history and make it seem like white supremacists were not so bad towards people from African indigenous Americans. There's some education videos that are very racist and they make it seem like, oh, they actually treat people from Africa, in other words, their slaves, really well. It was not that bad. They're more like indentured servants. Or, indigenous Americans were not killed harshly and violently by the Pilgrims and all the white supremacists. They actually were just friends that unfortunately died from just the diseases that the Pilgrims, aka the fake Americans, came in and gave to them. They really tried to simplify and whitewash everything. So a lot of this is gonna be a whitewash history of what actually happened. Which is important why we should keep everything digitally, like a digital copies of things, so that you actually know the history. So interesting gonna read here is gonna talk about how they claim that it's gonna be something kind that Biden administration is rewriting more the history of America and claim that this means so many rewritten moments in the nation's history that he's trying to bring all the truth back, which is all BS. One thing I thought was interesting too, besides that, is Trump is claiming that he wants to bring the truth, right? He wants to be objective facts. Like over here, he wants the objective facts with nothing to distort the narrative. But he himself has lied tens of thousands of times. We know Trump is a liar, and he doesn't go by facts. He rarely is ever speaking the truth about anything, unless he accidentally slips and actually says the truth. It's not common. So the very fact he's writing this is just ironic. Consider the Republican Party is the one who is racist, sexist, ableist, and xenophobic and misogynistic. They do everything you can think of that is extremely wrong, yet they try to switch things around as everyone's fault. This is at the vote will also impact the Smithsonian Institute. So all the Smithsonian museums in Washington D.C., for instance, this executive order is going to impact it a lot. So keep that in mind. I'm going to scroll down. You guys can pause to read more in detail. Some things I'm going to pick and explain a little bit more, but it's a lot of that BS. Don't trust this executive order. It's not a good thing. Now I keep scrolling down. It's a lot of these things. So one thing I found interesting, all right, is going to talk about how the Smithsonian American Museum today features the shape of power, stories of race, and American sculpture. And the exhibit is representing that societies, including the US, have used race to establish and maintain systems of power, correct, privilege, and disenfranchisement. So what does disenfranchisement just means, right? What does that word in particular means? That means that the US, especially white supremacists, have utilized the concept of race to reduce opportunities for people of color, black people, indigenous Americans, Hispanics, or people who just may not look white enough. Like white Brazilians can also be a target by a lot of white supremacists, as an example, or even a lot of white Jewish individuals still to this day. deal with a lot of Nazis' violent actions. So it just means they take away opportunities from you. Make it hard for you to attend education, make it hard for you to vote, run for office. Be able to have a fair and equal chance in life, so you can enhance your livelihood compared to white people. The white supremacists have been doing this for many, many years, for centuries. That's why we have white privilege, which just means that because of your skin color, you're able to have advantages, privileges that no one else has. So white people tend to get away with things that, look at Trump, for instance, that if it was a person of color, would not be so easy, right? A lot of white people can talk to cops more aggressively and have less chance of being shot or brutally bitten than if a person of color did the same equivalent. Even when people of color just doing peaceful protests like Black Lives Matter movements or civil rights movement, they get brutalized by cops. White people do not nearly as much as black people and other people of color. So those are little things to understand why and how this kept systems of power. How this all since the concept of race kept the system of powers by keeping people who are not white on the bottom as much as possible, remove chances from voting, and make it hard to run for office, have a hard time getting promoted if you do a better job, or keep calling you DI candidate so you don't get a job or you get fired. Is how to keep the system in power. This is how to keep the white people seen as the ones that everyone should copy and the ones that get the best opportunities, while everyone else don't get anything. Even though a lot of these white people are the ones who are literally what Trump would call a DI candidate. They are what people call DI. It's a lot of nepotism and not based on natural achievements. So everybody's going to be talking about race and how the sculpture has been a powerful tool in promoting scientific racism, which is correct. A lot of sculptures of white supremacists does promote racism and promotes the view that race is not a biological reality but a social construct, saying race is a human invention. Correct. Race is not uh, a biological concept. It's a social construct created by white supremacists. We already know this. That's why it's a human invention. We have biological pigmentation, which is like skin color, that helps you adapt to certain conditions. If it's really hot, especially if it's really you have a lot of sunlight, makes sense to have darker skin color to be able to reflect some of the sunlight and not absorb as much. But if you live in a less sunny area of planet Earth, like some areas in Europe, for instance, you need to have lighter skin tone so they can absorb more sunlight. Makes sense, right? But race itself is that's not skin color. Race is literally calling someone, oh, you're African. So you're gonna have less right than me because you're not white. That happens a lot. And that's how white supremacists did it back then. And still do it today. They use the whole concept of race, which is a social construct, to basically create ways to divide people into categories of who should have more privilege than others. It's a big issue. So the Smithsonian Institute is going to be heavily impacted by this executive order. This could potentially take away funding for the institution. So keep that in mind, which is unfortunate. The National Museum of African American History and Culture has proclaimed that hard work, individualism, and the nuclear family are aspects of white culture. Things are more complex than that. They will just, welcome Smithsonian American Women's History Month, plans on celebrating the exploits of male athletes participating in women's sports. So things are going to get a little bit more complex with these things. To advance this policy, we will restore the Smithsonian Institute to its rightful place as a symbol of inspiration and American greatness. So yeah, it's not going to be a good thing. I'm going to keep scrolling down. The Vice President and the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, shall work with the Congress to ensure that future appropriations to the Smithsonian Institution prohibit expenditures on exhibits or programs that degrade shared American values. Yeah, it's just gonna be a whole BS here. Anything that talks about African American history, women's history, Indigenous American history, it's gonna be impacted. They want to talk more about white supremacists. Now we remember the Civil War and what happened to the Union Confederates. They want the Confederate statues back in public places. They want this military base to be named again after white supremacists, aka Confederates, Confederate soldiers. It's a problem. So the Secretary of Interior shall provide sufficient funding as available to improve the infrastructure at Independence National Historical Park, which should be completed by July 4th, 2026. Okay. the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. All right, it's a lot of BS. So a lot of this just to say it's a lot of BS. It's not a good thing. There's all the executive orders from March 25th, 2025. So March 25th, 2025, preserving and protecting the integrity of American elections. Now this is another big one, and why this matters. So Trump wants to have as much control as possible of current and future elections. He wants to be able to basically claim that everything is fraud if a Republican is not winning. This is basically a way to make voting less powerful as it used to be. This is why I told people many times before voting matters, and when you vote or don't vote, when you vote against the best interest or you choose not to vote, you get people like Trump. And this is going to make it harder to be able to replace them with better people. And people don't vote during primary elections, which matter just as much as the general election. That's when you have a chance to potentially have someone way better than if you just went to the general election. You gotta do research. You gotta read things that I know a lot of people don't like doing, but you have to do it. You have to educate yourself. If you don't educate yourself, most people are not gonna go out their way to educate you. Or the other, someone's gonna go out their way and just watch a YouTube video, someone tell them, "Oh, this is a good thing about this individual, the bad things, but this is how they're better than this other candidate." Most people don't do that crap. They go, "Oh, you have an R next to name, I'll vote for you. You have a D next to name, I'll vote for you." Which is bad. People should do research. They should care because then it also will impact you. Unless you're a billionaire or a multimillionaire, you will be impacted. So the US now fails to enforce basic necessary election protection provided by more developed nations, as well as those still developing India and Brazil. For example, are trying voter identification to a biometric database, while the US largely relies on self attestation for citizenship. Yeah, so basically, they just want to make things hard to vote. A big deal about this whole executive order is to force people to have to bring more identification to prove the citizenship. So, an example of this birth certificate, US passport, and you also have to bring another identification to prove your home address. It's not just going to be a driver's license and that'll be it. They want more and more things to make it harder to prove it. And they will not make passports free, as they should, so that people can prove, hey, I'm a US citizen. Maybe add a little bit of address there so people have one identification for everything. No, they're gonna make you pay for it. I think over 100 million Americans do not have a US passport, including a passport card. They do not have a passport card, which is the card version of your passport and easy way to prove that you're a citizen. But you have to pay for all these things. It's not cheap. And the fact that they're trying to get rid of USPS everywhere and make it hard for you to go to USPS near you, especially if you live in a rural area, it's going to be even hard because a lot of people get the US passports through a USPS location. So they make it even hard for that. They do everything they can to make it hard for people to vote. They also make it harder by removing voting booths. Basically, areas where you can vote in your community, they remove those areas specifically from cities and counties they know largely vote democratically. So a lot of black people, for instance, tend to vote more democratically than Republican, which means it's gonna be hard for them to vote. They remove those areas. Oh, you can't vote in this area anymore. But we have, a bunch of black people there, indigenous Americans, Hispanics. You have to go to this specific area that could be 30 plus minutes away from you to vote. That's another thing they're also doing. On top of, make sure you bring a passport. Because if you don't, you won't be able to vote. Even though you are proven, because you have a voter ID. But that may not be enough in many states. And according to this executive order, that probably not be enough to prove your citizenship. So just keep that in mind. That's basically, in a nutshell, what this executive order is about. Nothing they want us to do. Voting by mail, they hate that. So if you vote by mail and your mail gets, instead of getting there exactly on election day, your voting ballot gets there maybe on, instead of November 4th, it gets on November 5th, 6th, which is legal because as long as you mail out on the day of, it could take a couple days or so before it reaches to the people to be able to count your vote. Trump doesn't want that. He wants to make sure that everything gets only counted on the day of. Why? Because he knows that people who tend to vote by mail tend to be leaning more left leaning, and they tend to be vote more likely for Democrats. That's the whole point, to make it even harder to vote. So that even if you do everything correctly, you have a passport, you make sure you have driver's license, everything's up to date, nothing's expired. You go there on time, you vote by mail. Because you mail didn't get on the election day, you got it the next day, it shouldn't count. That's what Trump wants to do. which also will make it harder for people who are, for example, people in the military who are living internationally, because in those bases they're gonna have a hard time voting because they can take long and guess takes long to get there, and it's gonna be by mail, so it takes time to deliver. It's unfair to them. This is where disenfranchisement comes in mind because then it reduces your voting power, especially for people who vote democratically, for Democratic Party candidates. So keep that in mind. That's why these things matter. They really want to force people to, as much as possible, vote in person, which again is wrong. People should be able to vote by mail if they want to, as long as they put vote mail by or on the day of election day. It doesn't matter if it gets like 2, 3, a week later. The stamp day is by the day of the election. Who cares? But Trump doesn't like that, especially because that was part of the reason how he lost against Trump. That's how Trump lost against Biden back in 2020. Unfortunately, those 89 million people who came in hand last year didn't decide not to vote. It's unfortunate. The federal laws such as National Voter Registration Act require states to maintain an accurate and current statewide list of every legally rights to vote in the state. Yes, there's no problem with that. A lot of these things just BS when trying to make it hard for you to vote. I give many examples of how he's gonna do that. I'm gonna keep scrolling down so you guys can read it more. I just want to summarize it for you so that you didn't have to read this in full detail unless you wanted to. And like I said before in many of my previous videos, everything's gonna be in my description. They want to try to claim there's so many voter fraud going on that a lot of people are not qualified to vote at register. They're not. It doesn't work that way. So lies from Trump. I know a lot of people want to believe him, his supporters, and a lot of them will be impacted by this because majority of Trump supporters, I would guess, do not have U.S. passport, and to get one in a rural state like Alabama, for instance, it's gonna be hard. Mississippi, it's not gonna be easy. Those red states are gonna make it difficult for you to get a passport, and this should be free. If you're gonna make it as a requirement, you shouldn't have to pay for it. If you needed to be able to vote, just scrolling down so you can read more in detail. I basically summarized this already, but it's just a lot of BS for him. Lots and lots of issues with this exact for. It's kind of longish compared to some other ones, but I basically summarized what he would do with it. This article from Alternet, this was from March 14, 2025. This was talking about earlier. JD Vance says that don't you all have jobs? Basically, mocking Americans protesting Social Security cuts. So, Republican Party hates the Social Security administration. They hate that working class people can get Social Security checks when they retire. It's something they've been trying to get rid of for a very long time, so that you never retire work until the day you die. Basically, becoming wage slavers. That's the whole point. And he thinks that people protesting Social Security cuts don't have jobs. And the whole point is to mock these people so that they feel like, oh wow, so I guess I'm a loser because I'm protesting you from making it hard for people to retire than just working my 9 to 5 and get my paycheck and move on. Okay, JD Vance is a white supremacist. There's a guy who agrees with Israel just like Trump does, with the whole genocide of Palestinians. We know how these people think, and they hate people who be able to retire. And for many, many Americans, for millions, tens of millions of retirees without Social Security, they will die. They will not be able to afford the bills. Same thing without having Medicare, they will die. And that's what they want. Even though the large voter bases tend to be elderly people, Republicans, at the same time, they want to get rid of them because we have to give them Social Security checks. The whole point of the government is to make sure that we work for the people. I work as a state government employee. The purpose of a government is not to enrich the rich and the wealthy. It's to make sure that working class and middle class we can live a life with dignity and not be struggling so much, which is something that Republicans don't want. They want to struggle so you're desperate and don't fight back. You just bend over and or go on your knees and do exactly as you told. That's what they want. You become a wage slave and not question their actions, while people like Musk, Trump, among others, keep enriching themselves, even though they already are billionaires. They will never stop trying because they want to stay rich and wealthy and just have unlimited power and be able to do whatever they want with people they don't like. Even if they like you, if you're not rich, they won't give two craps about you. That's the reality of things. So that's basically the article. So a lot of mocking people who are just protesting Social Security cuts. And again, a lot of people getting Social Security cuts are people who voted for Trump and Republicans into Congress. It's unfortunate, but these people never learn. You can't convince a MAGA or a Republican to rechange their mind. You got to convince the 89 million plus people who don't vote. Those are the people who really want to explain why it matters, not the people who kind of already lost. So the impact of Trump's tariffs is projected to cost the average American household anywhere from $1,600 to $2,000 more per year. That's a lot for some people. That's enough to lose your home. Keep that in mind. So a lot of this is just terrible things. And JD Vance, like Trump, he's just a prick. This other article is from March 13, 2025. Elon Musk hit with first formal conflict of interest complaint over FAA Starlink deal. So basically, they think that because technically Musk owns Starlink and he's trying to make the federal government make a contract with Starlink, it's incredibly illegal. That alone should be enough to put Musk in prison, along with Trump, allowing him to do this, but that won't happen. But this is obviously very wrong. It's an obvious conflict of interest because he owns Starlink and he wants the federal government to make contracts with Starlink and making this a legal thing when it's a huge conflict of interest. So this is more detail about it. And man, federal law prohibits government employees, including special government employees like Musk, from participating personally and substantially in any particular matter in which the employee, their spouse, their companies, or other business partners have any financial interest. When in willful violations being punishable by up to 5 years in prison or fines up to $50K per offense. Nothing that's gonna happen. We know that it's illegal what he's doing, just like the whole trying to convince Wisconsin voters to vote for Republicans by giving them some money to do so. It's extremely illegal. But I can 100% guarantee you, nothing's gonna happen to Musk. So I'm gonna just scroll down here, just so you guys can read more in detail. But I can guarantee you nothing's gonna happen until the really probably take the military to do something. And I don't see the military siding with the public. Majority of military veterans are unfortunately right wingers. They're not there for the people, and they'll truly follow any order. They don't allow them whatever the president says and the generals and not think twice. It's unfortunate. Not all of them, but a lot of people in the military are not gonna do crap to save their country from white supremacists. It's just a reality. The right to vote is not absolute. GOP bid to steal North Carolina's Supreme Court election held by Court of Appeals. Of course, now they're saying that your right to vote is not absolute, even though, according to the Constitution, it is. So Judge Jefferson Griffin, the Republican candidate for the North Carolina Supreme Court, listens to testimony in Wake County Superior Court on Friday, February 2nd, 2025. So the North Carolina Court of Appeals heard oral arguments Friday in Republican State Supreme Court candidate Jefferson Griffin's ongoing legal effort to overturn the results of last year's election and disenfranchise over 65,000 voters. It already happened last year, dude. Because he's complaining that he lost by 734 votes. Yeah, you lost. Even after two counts, he still lost. He doesn't want to concede. Put him in prison. That's it. Registration errors. So now because allegedly registration errors, 65,000 people should not be able to vote. Yeah, no. They're really just retroactively. How are you gonna disqualify all these people last? This is bullshit. This is complete bullshit. Yeah, this is not a good lawsuit. Lawsuit is in the sole GOP effort to overturn the election. A concurrent lawsuit filed by Republican National Committee also seeking to have a court toss out tens of thousands of ballots cast in the November election for the same reason raised by Griffin. Yeah, if they end up agreeing with this decision, again, it's hard to know if you're even gonna have a Democrat state anymore at this point, like a national country that is democratic. It's like voting doesn't matter at that point. Yeah, this is all just BS. Now, RFK Jr. makes the serving cranes looking measles support diet and exercise. This is from March 10, 2025. The Health Post, I think that's how you say it. So, RFK Jr. is really dumb. It's not the brightest dude out there. And he thinks that measles just poor diet and lack of exercise. We have measles vaccine for a reason. It's a viral disease. that specifically kills children and the elderly the most. It's very deadly, can really harm a whole community. Many kids have been dying again recently in the US because parents are not taking the vaccine, not allowing the kids to take the vaccine. And some parents make a whole bunch of excuses and say, "Man, hey, I was wrong." They will still double down and say, "Well, if it's what God wanted, then it is what it is." It's horrible, to say things like that and not just admit that you were wrong and that you're the reason why your child died. You can blame RFK Jr., but you know the music has been working for decades. It's not new technology. It's not something new that just happened yesterday. It's been tested and used for many years. No one's surprised that it works. So the very fact they have people still today arguing against vaccines that work, it really demonstrates that a lot of people need to educate themselves. Ignorance is not a good thing. Learn what vaccines are, how they work. They do not cause people to be neurodivergent or anything like that. It's not going to cause you to have any of these issues. You need to learn what vaccines are and how they work. This is basic biology 101. This is not something you just learn in college. So people need to do better. So he's basically this whole arc is talk about how RFK Jr. is trying to make some correlation, make a connection. He wants to make a connection that lack of exercise and poor diet is the reason why you're getting measles. Instead of saying, hey, it's because they're not taking the measles vaccine. Well, yeah, they're breaking in Texas. Our child was unvaccinated, died. And the problem is, even if you're vaccinated, if someone who's unvaccinated gets measles, they can still spread to you. It's dangerous. So making sure everyone's vaccinated pretty much reduce the chance of you dying from these diseases that were kind of resolved, right? We didn't have this issue thanks to vaccine. Why bring it back? Why have more people die? That's basically the whole article. It's really freaking stupid. This article from March 24, 2025 from ABC A News talks about how Youngkin vetoes bills that will have raised minimum wage, giving paid leave, paid sick leave to all and more. So Governor Youngkin, a Republican, of course, he basically vetoed a bunch of bills that will help literally enhance a lot of people's livelihood by raising the minimum wage of his state, making sure that everyone has guaranteed paid sick leave for Virginia workers. So this is in Virginia, and create a board to review prescription drug pricing. So instead of passing a very common sense bills into law that would make sense, he just vetoed bills that will actually raise enhance the livelihood of many people. Basic leave is needed, so you don't have to worry as much taking time off from work if you're getting paid for it. You increase the minimum wage, great. People should make more money. It's inflation is really bad. Make sure you can review drug prices so people can afford drugs. Makes sense. Everything that Republicans hate. And again, people keep voting for Republicans. And look what keeps happening. They don't care about the working class and middle class people. Stop voting for them. It's not good for you. It's not gonna benefit you. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican yourself. You're conservative. You like traditional values. Your grandma can die because of things like this. Your son, your daughter, your future children not gonna struggle just as much, if not more than you, because you keep voting against their best interests. Don't vote for yourself. Vote for other people in their behalf to improve their lives. So getting rid of this, what it's not good. I'm sure they're gonna use excuses to just make it uh, some bad reason why this would be bad sign to law. Oh, everyone has to pay more in taxes if you raise them in a wage, or it's gonna make a business. It's gonna make all local business have a hard time hiring people. Oh, it's tough to afford anything anyway. So why increase the minimum wage? It's a lot of BS, a lot of excuses. Why should people take pay time off to just go see a doctor? They should not get paid. Should not be the business responsibility to pay you to see a doctor. Even though if you don't have a full time job, you can't afford a lot of times insurance because more in the US to get insurance you really need an employer. And even then it can be still very expensive. If you pay purely out of pocket, then your employer is not contribute to any cost of it. And it's really hard to afford insurance, and then you have no coverage, and then it's gonna skyrocket in the expense of just prescription plans, and then how you gonna afford your diabetes medication, and all that. So it all connects. Yeah, it's sad. I just scroll down to so you can read more in detail all the bills, but yeah, really sucks. Now the last one is about from Newsweek, March 26, 2025. Ireland issues travel warning for US. I don't blame them. I agree with the decision. That's a good decision to do.